Hey, everybody, thanks for tuning in. On this week's episode is the first installment of Shitcoiner turned Bitcoiner. I had thrown this question out on Twitter to see if there were any fellow plebs that wanted to come on and tell their story of how they went from being a shitcoiner to a Bitcoin only person. So the first one on the docket is Josh Khon. That's who I interviewed for this episode. Josh is on Twitter. He's known as Thunder Meat, which is a great name. And it was a great conversation. He's an art teacher, and he's got young kids, teenagers and stuff like that he's trying to um get into Bitcoin. And he's kind of like, they're like, oh, dad, you're a Bitcoiner or whatever, stop talking about it. But then he said, during the interview, his one son actually is getting into it. So yeah, it's just fun to have these conversations, hear different people's stories. And I really enjoyed this conversation with Josh. And I'm glad to meet a fellow pleb here in the Twitter sphere. So if you want to reach out to me, you can email me, Bitcoin Made Simple Podcast at gmail.com. Any questions? If you are a pleb that wants to come on on the show, um, hit me up there or hit me up on Twitter at Cory_Tusick, and I will gladly have you on. Love to hear everyone's stories and how they go through this. So thanks to our sponsors, the Bitbox O2 hardware wallet from Shift Crypto. Go to shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin Made Simple. Use the promo code Bitcoin Made Simple to get 5% off. Also, Movies Plus. Go to mymoviesplus.com or just go into the app stores, look for Movies Plus, and you can use the promo code Cory, Cory, to get 20% off an annual subscription. We have tons of Bitcoin content and tons of other great content. Probably by the time this episode is released, we'll actually have announced our first original films. And I think you guys will enjoy them because there's a lot of heat that's going to be coming. They're going to get a lot of attention. So, and also Upstream Data. Thanks to Steve Barber for sponsoring the show and all the great innovations that he is providing. And actually, I think the next episode is with me and Adam O. So it was a good one. We talked about all the different ins and outs of Bitcoin mining. But yeah, upstreamdata.ca is where you can check out the black box and find a way to muffle the sound of your miners and also mitigate the heat a little bit. At least you can put them outside, and they're weatherproof and all that good stuff. So more information there, upstreamdata.ca. And I think that's it. If there's anything else you guys need, again, reach out to me, Bitcoin Made Simple Podcast at gmail.com, and I will gladly interview any pleb that wants to come on and tell their story. I will talk to you guys later. Thanks. Okay, so I am here with Thunder Meat, which is one of the funniest Twitter names. Um, but yeah, this is the first episode I'm doing that is the shitcoiner turned Bitcoiner episode. And I think some of you have seen, I reached out on Twitter and said, "Hey, who wants to come on?" So I had a couple people come on, and this is the first one that I'm actually doing. So I think this will be a fun series because we all had our shitcoining phase. Um, but yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience. Tell them a little bit about yourself and your background, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, my name is Josh, and I'm a teacher. I teach middle school art. I'm married. I have three kids. One is going to be a senior this year. He's getting ready to graduate. I have a sophomore daughter and a fifth grade daughter. And uh, I'm fairly new to crypto and Bitcoin. I'm going on almost a year and a half, I guess, from when I first got introduced to it. Um, do you want me to just kind of tell you how I got started into it and all that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Well, first of all, I should ask you about so fifth grade, or what you're teaching middle school art.
Yes.
Okay, is
Uh,
that like what grades?
it's sixth, seventh, and eighth grade.
Okay, okay. Those were my favorite art years. because we had a pretty cool art teacher, Mr. Mr. Carson, if you're listening, Mr. Carson. Um, and he let us, like, come down during our free periods and do things like shadow art and all that kind of stuff. So, we were listening to like Rage Against the Machine, Battle of Los Angeles had just come out. We'd be listening to that, and like, you would have thought it was like a group of stoners, but
There's never a dull moment in middle school art class for sure.
I'm sure you get a lot of interesting art.
Yeah.
Um, so okay, so yeah, so give us your background, like how what got you into Bitcoin, all that kind of stuff, and crypto in general, and then we'll go from there.
Um, I first heard about Bitcoin probably about 5 years ago. I don't even know exactly how many years ago it was, to be honest with you. I remember catching the tail end of an interview on the radio where someone was mentioning Bitcoin, and that was probably maybe 2015 or 16. And that's the first time I heard of it. Didn't think anything of it, probably like most people when they first hear about it. And I did not hear of it again until last January 2020, 2021 is when um, my brother sent a text and said, "Hey, I just bought some Bitcoin." I'm like, "Oh, that's cool. Like, what is that?" And so that kind of got me started. And at that time, I had just sold my house and bought a new house, but we weren't able to roll over our profits from our old house into our new house because of the way that the buying and selling of the two houses didn't line up quite right. So they told us we had to wait a couple months before we were able to put our money from our old house into our new house. And at that point, that's when my brother mentioned Bitcoin. I'm like, wow, why don't I just use this money for some crypto instead of
Just
putting it into my
FOMO in.
house? And so, and of course, my wife knows nothing about Bitcoin either. So,
That was your
but
hardest sell.
what's that?
That was your hardest sell. You had
Yeah,
to sell her.
I told her we'd be millionaires in in a year or two. I sold it pretty hard, even though at that point I was completely clueless. Um, and so um, at that point, I didn't know the difference between crypto and Bitcoin. My brother, unfortunately, I love him, but he recommended, a book that he read, and it was a crypto book, not a Bitcoin book. And for anybody who's new to the space, um, there is a huge difference between crypto and Bitcoin. I remember reading that book, being completely clueless at the time as to what Bitcoin or crypto was. And I read that crypto book and I was still clueless. I had no idea what was going on or what it was. Um,
This was probably like a multi-level marketing pitch where it was just like, got you excited, like, oh, I'm excited. I don't know why.
yeah, I mean, it sounded interesting, but it lacked a lot of, detail as to what exactly it was and why it's worth anything. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I kind of just I started buying stuff, as you could say, shit coins. And then I realized, well, maybe I need some help. And so I started looking to see like where I could get information from people that actually know what they're doing. Unfortunately, I think I picked the wrong people again. I actually signed up for oh, what do you call it? I don't even know what you call it. I signed up for something where I get a weekly newsletter and stuff like that, and they tell you what coins you should buy and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of got me, um, you know, heading towards you know things like I bought like Tezos, I bought Compound, I bought uh, the dreaded Luna.
Mm-hmm.
I bought, I mean, everything. They had a list of like 10 of their top picks. I probably bought every one of them. And of course, at that time in January of 2021, everything was good. You could buy anything at that point,
Mm-hmm.
and it was going up. So I thought I was a genius at that point because everything I bought was doing great. of course, until May and June of that year, and then everything tanked. Um, so what started my wheels turning in a different direction was I got on Twitter and just started following people, and I noticed Bitcoiners were they continued to say things like, "I'm never selling my Bitcoin," and
Mm-hmm.
that's a foreign phrase to new people like me because I got in because I wanted to make money and like eventually sell it so I could get cash, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that got my wheels turning. So I actually had a few back and forths on Twitter with people asking, like, why would you never sell your Bitcoin? That doesn't even make sense. Um, and so uh, that's when I started looking deeper into just Bitcoin and looking at um, like what makes Bitcoin different and why would you never want to sell it? And of course, um, listening to Michael Saylor was a big deal because I mean, I could listen to Michael Saylor forever. Everything he says is golden. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
just learning about why Bitcoin is important and what's wrong with our monetary system. Because if you don't know what's wrong with the current system, you're not going to really understand how Bitcoin fixes it. Of course, I read a couple of Bitcoin books that helped. The Bitcoin Standards is a good one.
Mm-hmm.
I read a couple others. And I think the important thing for anybody who's new is that it really takes a lot of time to digest Bitcoin. Like I said, I'm a year and a half into this, and um, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
It changes, Bitcoin changes the way you think about almost everything, I feel like. And so it's so new, and you come in with your own preconceived biases and stuff like that. And when someone says Bitcoin is like perfect money or whatever, it's hard to wrap your mind around that, and it takes a long time to become, to go from buying all those other coins to realizing, man, I should have just stuck with Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so if you're new, keep that in mind. Really dig into it. It takes a long time to really learn, like, why is it probably impossible for any other coin to really overtake Bitcoin? And there really isn't going to be another Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is it. But it's hard for new people to wrap their heads around
Mm-hmm.
that. I didn't have, I mean, I did get wrecked a little bit with some of those coins, but I did have some successes. I had some success with Cardano and Polygon and a few other things where I actually made profit, but I'm not a trader. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and no newbies are really. So when you start messing around with those other coins, it's really easy to get wrecked because you don't know when to buy and sell and all that. And that's kind of the good thing about Bitcoin. I feel like it's a long term thing. I've got some now, and I'm just going to hold on to it, and I don't have to worry about, oh, is it up? Do I need to sell it, or is it down? Whatever. I just go to sleep at night, and I realize in 5 or 10 years, um, almost everyone's going to be using Bitcoin at that point, and all those other coins. I don't know. I mean, they may have some usefulness, and they may gain value. Um, I know most Bitcoiners say that they're all scams. I mean, I'm not going to say that they're all scams. They might have some usefulness, but it's my belief that Bitcoin will outpace them in the long run as far as value. And you're playing with fire with a lot of them. I bought Luna
Mm.
pretty cheap at a couple bucks, and I thought I was a rock star. It ended up being more than half my portfolio when it was, at its peak. And I thought, well, dang, man, I'm amazing. crypto investor. I know what I'm doing and all that. And then, one morning I wake up and it's all gone
Oh,
in a blink of an eye. And there's nothing I could do because I had it staked. I can't. It takes 21 days to unlock your Luna, so there's no way I could sell it, even when I saw that it was plummeting. And that was the case for most people that were in Luna. There's no way to get out of it. Um,
you just had to
and
watch it disappear and evaporate.
yeah, it hurt, but I mean, it was such a small. Like when I initially invested in Luna, it was like 1% of my portfolio. So it it hurt when it went to zero because I didn't sell it when it was at the top. But overall, I guess if I try to rationalize it by saying, well, I just lost 1% of my portfolio.
Yeah.
Uh, Technically, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That makes sense.
um, Kind of lost my train of thought
Oh,
there.
sorry. I derailed you.
That's all right. So I guess when I first got in, it was kind of dangerous because I was somewhat clueless, and yet I had some money to invest. So that's kind of a dangerous thing. So my advice for newbies is, kind of take it slow. Um, just buy Bitcoin and realize that it's going to take a while to wrap your head around it. And it's the Bitcoin rabbit hole. Apparently, is endlessly deep, and you can continue learning new things about Bitcoin and what it solves. Um, there's no end to it. Um, that's what I've learned so far. Um, I was just with a couple of friends last week on a vacation, and the topic of Bitcoin came up, and one of them was just adamant that he hated
Hmm.
Bitcoin and crypto because of the energy use, and I guess I never understood why people are so against Bitcoin because of the energy. I guess they just don't understand Bitcoin, because if you understand what Bitcoin is, you realize that the fact that it uses energy um, is what makes Bitcoin Bitcoin. It's what secures it. It's what you know. It's what allowed Bitcoin to solve the double spending problem,
Mm-hmm.
um, and using a little bit of energy to create the best money in the world. I feel like you know that's not a bad thing, um, but it's hard to convince other people of that,
Mm-hmm.
especially if they don't really know and understand how important Bitcoin is. You say something to someone like Bitcoin might be one of the best inventions that humans ever came up with, and they laugh at you. They have no idea what you're talking about. They think you're joking when you say something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And no, I'm not joking. I really do think Bitcoin is one of the greatest uh, creations that humans came up with, and it's going to change everything. Just like in I forget which book I was just reading, but Bitcoin doesn't have one use case. Bitcoin has every use case because you can you use money to buy everything,
Mm-hmm.
and Bitcoin is the best money there is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then the other friend I was with this past week when we were talking about Bitcoin, his thing was, what's to stop another crypto from being Bitcoin? Like, what's he kept saying, like, what's stopping Doge, or what's stopping I forgot what other coin he came up with, but what's stopping these other things from overtaking Bitcoin? And that was a tough question for me too when I first got into it. Like, why can't these other things overtake Bitcoin?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not an easy question to answer. You really have to put in your some time and research into figuring out what exactly make separates Bitcoin from all those other things. It's decentralized. No one's in charge of it. It's you know there's no single point of failure anywhere in the network. It's you know it's not like those other coins that keep, they don't have a limit. They just, Doge coins got no limit to it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So once again, if you're a newbie, just realize that it takes time and a lot of research to wrap your head around uh, Bitcoin and what makes it separates it from all those other things that you think are shiny and new. And if you're a gambler, and I kind of sometimes think of myself as a gambler, um, if you're a gambler and you want to gamble on those other coins, um, go for it, I guess. But it truly is a gamble. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you can lose it in a hurry. Um,
It's like worse than a casino gamble because like the cards are even more stacked against you because you have all these people just ready to rug pull you.
Absolutely, you don't know what's going to happen with some of those. You hear something cool on Twitter or wherever, whatever social media, like, hey, there's the newest thing and it's going to the moon, and you figure, well, why not? Throw some money in there and see what happens. But usually, what happens is it doesn't end well for a lot of people. So I know the Bitcoin maxis, their heart is to try to save people from that fate.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so um,
It's kind of like it is tough because it's like tough love, and sometimes maybe it can be a little too harsh. But
right.
like, I'll be honest, if it wasn't like harsh like that, I don't think it would have got my attention. Like,
Yeah, yeah. When I first started listening to the Bitcoin maxis, I kind of thought they were jerks. In the way they come across is kind of jerky.
mm-hmm.
Uh,
But
but
like,
yeah, it might be necessary in a sense to be that bold in order to catch people's attention, so that hopefully they listen. I, I I try to plant seeds when I talk to people. I know they're not going to get it right away.
mm-hmm.
Um, but if I plant a few seeds and say a few things that get them thinking, um, hopefully they'll do their own research or come back later and ask more questions. But it's understanding Bitcoin is more than just one conversation. It's too much. Um, so when I talk to people about it, I try to focus on like one aspect of it, or ask them what one thing about it do they not understand. And just try to hone in and focus on just one aspect of it, because it's just too big, it's too broad to try to hammer it all out in one conversation.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, oh boy. I mean, I've been watching it for a while. I've been invested for over 2 years now, and like, I'm still just like, I think I've said publicly now a couple of times, like last spring, like spring 2021 was like the last time that I thought I understood Bitcoin. And like now I'm just like, I'm just gonna shut up and listen and learn. And that's what the podcast is great for, because like, whether it's, conversations about mining, you know, like conversations like this where, like I'm hearing your story and everything, and I'm like, because it's just your perspective now. I was like, you know what? I think I need to like differentiate my conversations, like, because the way I try to convert people on Twitter might be a little bit more brash and might be a little bit more toxic maxi. And, but then like in person, when people like ask me like, oh, like, do you like buy, I'm like, oh, the rest of them are all like scams, and it's like, that sounds a little maybe dogmatic, or like, very like you're in a cult or something, where it's
Yeah.
like everything else is a scam. um where if like I can say the same thing but frame it differently to say like, because like I've found i'm I'm I get exhausted explaining why, So like it's easy to just say like, oh, everything's a scam. But like
It,
hearing you talk about, it, I'm like, oh no, you need to walk people through it and plant those seeds early.
it was definitely a turnoff when I first started hearing people saying everything was a scam. Because, I mean, realistically, yes, a lot of them are. Maybe most of them are. But in my mind, the ones that I had invested in, I thought, well, those aren't scams. Why are you calling everything scams? And so it was a huge turnoff. But um, that's once again, it's just you have to learn about it. You have to do your research. And eventually, I realized, yeah, Luna wasn't for real. Luna was a scam, and I thought it was,
Yeah.
great.
Well, that's what I tell everybody now. I'm like, I all of them have CEOs and a central point of failure. And I realize that one of the main things Bitcoin is doing is the decentralization of it. So let's get away from that central point of failure. And then when it comes to you know, is it a scam or is it, I don't know. I just try to tell people like, look, if it has any value, it will exist on top of Bitcoin eventually. Because like I tell people frequently, but the Lightning Network white paper, what officially flipped me into a maxi because it was still very early on, like a couple years ago, and I was like, oh, fast transactions make sense, with Ethereum, and I'll just hold on to one ETH because. And
Mm-hmm.
then I had heard about the Lightning Network, but I didn't really get it. And then so I was like, all right, I need to read this thing. And I was like, whoa, okay. Oh, everything that can be done, all the other things. So like if anything has a utility value, it's kind of cool. It's almost like a sandbox, to use like a tech term, but like where like you can play with stuff before you publish it to the web. You like are messing around, putting different things. So it's almost like I'd prefer people play on top of Bitcoin, but it's like you see something that improves privacy, and it's like, okay, that's cool. Like your coin is crap and it's gonna fall apart, but like there's some elements here that maybe we could pull over. Um, so that's the way I look at it now. But it's a tough conversation, but the maxis just you know continue to be shown to be right. Like I'll say over the last couple of years, ever since March of 2020, I'm like, man, these like maxis have just like, for the most part, been like hitting like batting 1,000, with like
Yeah.
not just calling out scams, but like government things and like escalations and wars. And, you're like, whoa, like they are really like, because whenever I would have never known this if it wasn't for maxis and everything. But whenever Putin said that he was going to start accepting uh, other currencies and gold for oil. That was like a month before he invaded Ukraine, and I was like, oh, I was like signpost. I was like, something's about to go down, and I was like, I only know that because of Bitcoin. Like
Yeah.
that's the weirdest thing. Like I know this geopolitical thing is going to happen because of Bitcoin. So it's kind of like what you said, like it reaches into everything. How have you seen it reach into everything, especially with being like an educator and stuff? Have you seen it? Has it changed your view on education at all?
Um, not really. Not in my. I haven't seen it bleed into what I do as an educator yet. I could see, in another year or two, I could see Bitcoin being like, something that anchors, the retirement system. You know what I mean? Stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. Um, but in my everyday life as a teacher, no, nobody talks about it. Um, Literally, people think that hyper Bitcoinization is just going to, something that's going to happen pretty soon in a year or two or something like that. There are so many people that have never even heard of Bitcoin still to this day, or they might have just heard it in passing but have no idea what it is. I think we have a lot of education to do because there's still so many people that are clueless about it, have no idea what it is or what it does. It's not something that's in The mainstream news, I guess. Like, and I don't even watch the news. That's the other thing. And I think a lot of people are kind of in the same boat as me. Like, I don't normally watch the news.
Hmm.
I, I mean, if I wasn't on Twitter, I would never hear anything about Bitcoin ever. Like, the conversation I had with my friends the other day about Bitcoin was because I brought it up, not because they brought it up.
Hmm.
There's still so many people that just don't know what it is, or maybe haven't even heard of it. It's we're still early. I think
Yeah, yeah,
still way early.
yeah. It's very far away. Like, I mean, there is the gradually then suddenly, you know, like
Yeah,
phrase, which is true. But I do think, like, I mean, in like January 2021, because I was a genius at that point. Like, I was like Bitcoin maxi. I was in before Elon. I was so smart.
yeah,
And, I was telling everybody like 100K by like probably March, like before Easter, it's going to be at 100K. Like, this is crazy. Um, and, I've had to swallow those bitter pills. But, but yeah, it just like I thought that hyper Bitcoinization was going to happen by like now, by 2022. Like, yeah, I was like, of course, it's
yeah,
going to be hyper Bitcoinization. Um, and so now, like, my friend Luke, my fellow pleb that the listeners know, he thinks that it'll be, I forget what his prediction is, but he thinks it'll be like $65 million a coin by 2030. And, but he's like, he has a rational bullish standard, like a view, but I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, there's a big thing to unpack here, um, to unravel this whole system. Um, but then again, like you see in like war torn areas when people are cut off from their financial assets, they're using Bitcoin to get around that. They're trying to flee their country and they can't take their money across the border, but they can store their wealth in their head. That's pretty crazy.
that's huge. Yep,
Um, I think
that's
that
life changing for a lot of people.
Yeah. I think that like with teachers, because so I have two siblings that are teachers, one at a private school, one at a public school, which, those both have their differences. I assume I are you in your classroom now setting up for the year?
Yeah, I'm in my classroom right now.
Yeah, yeah. I could tell. I mean, I just, you know, you have like the standard TV with the VCR. Well, I guess it's a DVD player nowadays.
That's old school. I haven't used that thing in 20 years, and I think I'm the only classroom in the school that still has it, and everyone else has got taken out. But for some reason, I still have my VCR.
That's so funny. Whenever that, like, if you're at a room that didn't have a TV and a VCR, and you would like walk into the classroom, there's that meme where it was like the thing that was on wheels that had the TV on it,
Yeah,
and you were like, you walked in, you were like, oh, today's gonna be a good day.
yeah,
It's
movie day.
Yep, today's a good day. But but so my brother is a high school physics teacher. And in the public system, I think I thought about this, and because we had two friends over the weekend that are both teachers, and I was thinking about like, because I'm an entrepreneur, so like I don't have some like fixed retirement plan and all that kind of stuff. So it's like there's the spoils of being an entrepreneur, but there's also like the spoils of being in like a fixed retirement, like where you're just where you're going. Like my brother when he got his job at 25, he knew like, oh yeah, I just stay here and keep working. I'm not saying it's an easy job. It's just it's a hard job, but he knew at that point, okay, when I hit 55, my pension will be X, and and a lot of people that are in the fixed income space, like my parents recently retired, and I watch them like and they get on Social Security, and you're like, okay, so like let's hopefully say you live, 30 years on Social
Mhm.
Security. Like in 30 years, is that Social Security payment going to cover your expenses?
I
I
was
don't,
I was just thinking along those lines because I have a couple of years until I retire, and I was thinking, there's no way with the rate of inflation, we know that's not going to stop anytime soon. There's no way that fixed income is going to cover your expenses 5, 10 years from now. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
have to get another job in your retirement. You know what I mean?
Yep. Which is what they want you to do because they want you to, keep buying useless stuff and,
Mm.
like spending more money. So they're like, no, 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 don't be sitting there enjoying your life, you know.
And Bitcoin changes like the way you think about time. Like Bitcoin is a long term thing. If everyone were to use Bitcoin, it would change the way you think. Instead of thinking I got to spend all this money right now before it loses its value in the next year or two. You can think long term with Bitcoin because Bitcoin's only, as Michael Saylor says, Bitcoin's only going up. It's going up forever
Yeah, it's going up
because
forever, Laura.
they're never going to stop printing money. So
Oh, I know. I mean, I feel like this quantitative tightening that they've been doing, which is necessary, and I'm kind of subscribing to the belief that the Fed is raising interest rates because they just want to crush the euro and everything else. But the faucet will turn back on. Those dollars are going to come pouring out again, um, and the inflation is just going to get out of control. Like, I mean, they're trying to tamp down inflation, and it's like, what was it, 9.1%? And
yeah.
like, I just saw somebody say that they work, like a friend of theirs works in a warehouse and that like handles grocery items, and they said like everything is like 20% inflation across the board.
Oh,
And like my wife, like we had like one of our kids' birthday parties recently, and she was like, it's like really expensive this year. So it's like it's funny, one of those things is Bitcoin sitting at like 20, what is it, 23K or something. So I look like an idiot that way. But it's like everything else I've said has been right. Like I told you, inflation's going to get out of control. I just thought they were going to happen in lockstep. So yeah, it's interesting, like because yeah, like I feel like teacher pensions should be allocating, like you should be at least allocating 1% of your pension towards it. Because I do firmly believe, I always tell people that if don't invest money that you need for 4 years. Like it just needs to be money that you can sit in the bank for 4 years. And if Bitcoin is less than $10 million per coin in purchasing power, circa 2009 purchasing power, then it's on sale.
yeah.
So just buy it. And then don't check the price. But like if you have a 1% allocation in you know, your pension fund, like it's gonna go through the roof.
Yeah,
Whenever hyper
one
Bitcoin is,
percent now is a big deal because yeah, it's going to skyrocket eventually.
I mean, think about like if you look at your pension, if any part of your pension where like or money market when people have money markets, if any part of that like 10x how big that would be, and like all of a sudden you'd have your portfolio would look huge. You'd be like, oh, that's great. And we know it's not going to stop at 10x, it's stop at 100x.
Yeah, I'm waiting for when my financial person um, tells me that they're offering some sort of Bitcoin um, investment because anytime I can invest tax free through that through the retirement system. I'm sure it won't be self custody Bitcoin, but if I can buy it tax free or whatever, or pre taxed, I should say, that would be a good deal for all of us. And I think it's only a matter of time before teachers and stuff like that, people like that, will be able to invest in Bitcoin for their retirement that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tried to help my parents. I don't know. I think my dad might still listen, but I was like, got them. I said, hey, like, yeah, I'm a genius. It was January 2021, and like I think by the time I convinced them to finally put it in, it was like the price of Bitcoin was like 44K, and then it went up, and I was like, see, I told you. And now I'm sitting here like, I like I was talking to my dad, and my mom chimed in the background, like, "Oh, how's Bitcoin?" Or I was like, "Yep, I know, I'm an
When,
idiot."
whenever I tell people about Bitcoin, I try to be careful uh, about saying that it's immediately going to go to the moon or something like that because it's so volatile. I'm very upfront when I tell people, yeah, it's volatile. It's because it's this is another Twitter or tweet thing that I heard someone say. It's the price of Bitcoin is a reflection of what clueless people think about Bitcoin. The
Yeah,
Bitcoin's price is a reflection of people that don't really understand Bitcoin. It's not $1 million yet because people don't understand that it's worth that much.
if people understood, it would be if people understood how much money Bitcoin was worth, it would be it would be like easily $1 million.
Yeah,
And the funny thing, like it's kind of like you said, like once you understand Bitcoin, like the price is almost irrelevant.
yeah,
Like it has much more utility than that. Um, well, I have to ask you about, you know, if you have three kids, so you mentioned they're a senior and down to what, fifth grade?
yep.
Um, what do you have your kids been exposed to it? Have you started talking to them about it?
Yes, and at first they made fun of me for it.
Yeah. Like, Dad, what are you
Oh,
doing?
yeah, Bitcoin, Dad. But now they, for the most part, they're not putting in their research. They're slackers. Let's just be real. They're slackers. They're not putting in their research.
What
My
teenager isn't?
Yeah, yeah, they think they know everything. But my oldest, my son, he's a senior this year. Um, he did ask me the other day. He's like, Dad, can I get some Bitcoin? And so that was good to hear that. But then I said, well, what's your plan? Like, what do you? How long do you want to hold on to this Bitcoin? He's like, I'm just going to hold on to it.
Nice.
So that's good to hear him say that. He wants Bitcoin and he's going to hold on to it. Um, he's not the most responsible person in the world, though, so I can see him losing his seed phrase 2 minutes after he gets it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that happens. That people have lost them before. Um,
I might have to be a co person on his account for that.
we should get him. I'll show the Bitbox 02 hardware wallet from Shift Crypto. That's our sponsor. Um, and get him one of those and uh I yeah, I wish I could go back if your son's listening to this, if he tunes in because his dad's on, like, dude, if you just allocate 10% of anything you earn
Mm-hmm.
and just put it, like, because really going back when I was a teenager, I should have just been taking 10% of what I earned and been putting it aside to save it.
Mm-hmm.
Even in fiat dollars, that would have been better than what I was doing with it. I was being an idiot and spending everything. But if he puts that in Bitcoin, like oh man, if I was 17 years old right now, I'd be
Mm-hmm.
taking my part-time checks and putting 10% into Bitcoin, and then boy, oh boy, by the time you're like 28, you're gonna be sitting pretty.
That's what I told my son. I said, 10 years from now, you'll thank me. You'll thank yourself for buying
Hmm.
Bitcoin right now. Um, but that's hard for even adults to figure that out, let alone a 17-year-old kid.
Oh, especially when you're a teenager and you're not thinking about when you're 28, like that just
Yeah.
doesn't cross your mind. I was just thinking about the fact that, like, because I think in these 10-year intervals now that I'm in my 30s, and I was like, I don't even think I fathomed that, like, when I was in high school, I was like, I'm like 10 years away from being like, in 10 years, I'll be a dad. Like, that thought never crossed my mind. Like, I was
Mm-hmm.
like, eventually I'll have kids. Like, I knew I would, but like, it's so much different than whenever, like, when you're 18 and you're like, 10 years ago, I was 8 years old. So, like,
Yeah.
10 years from now, like, what's going to be 10 years from now? Where, like, right now, I'm 36, and it's like 10 years ago, like, I don't know, my life was pretty much the same, like, a little bit different. but like I am who I am. Um, 10 years in the future, what am I going to be at 46? I don't know, just older, grayer, like more tired. It's
Um,
hard as an 18-year-old.
yes, and it's also hard because I have a my wife is very she's a very practical person, so she sees
Mine too.
uh, she sees in the very near future college expenses.
Yep.
So she's like, "Stop buying that Bitcoin stuff. We got college to pay for." I'm like, "Yeah, who cares about college?
Yeah.
We got Bitcoin to buy." Um,
Uh,
um,
she'll be
so
she'll be happy if Luke's thesis is that that he thinks the cycles will be shorter now. Um, so I don't think he'd be surprised if there was an all-time high within like 9, 10, 12 months. So if your son's going to be a senior,
mhm.
then you'd look like a genius. You'd be able to turn around to your wife and be like, "Hey, there we go. He's going to college, and look at all this Bitcoin we have. Like we're good to
Yeah,
go."
and
Um,
then she'll want me to sell it all, and I'll be heck no.
yeah, I know. That's the funniest part is that you'll be like, "Sell it," and you're like, No, what are you talking about?"
Yeah, why would I do that? It's going to a million, babe.
Yep, yep. It's um, yeah. I think that's something that all kids like if they could just start grasping it, which I'm pretty sure probably the kids you're teaching now will like grow up and it'll just be part of their life. Like,
Yeah, I think so. I think so. It's going to become part of their everyday life. Um, the boomers like us will.
the Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. The Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. It's pretty important to get because I don't know if you heard. I can't tell where I'm going to drop this part in the episode yet with Josh, but he was talking about getting into wallets, and his son wanted to learn how to get into wallets. So I'm sending him the promo code and the link that you guys get to. You go to shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin made simple and use promo code Bitcoin made simple. You get 5% off, and you get the best, sleekest hardware wallet in the game. And all we see on Twitter constantly is, "Hey, get your keys off the exchange because, oh, whether it's going to be regulation or there's going to be, you know, toll booths at the off ramps, let's say, um, off of the exchanges and onto to the hardware wallet. You better do it now. And also, oh, I don't know, these exchanges might go insolvent. So you definitely want to get yourself a Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. It is an easy to use, simple wallet. It is like the size of a thumb drive. It has a touch screen on it. It takes less than 5 minutes to figure it out, and it's very easy to use. Comes with a micro SD to back up your to create a backup for your wallet, and also it's open source, and the firmware is open source. So, all the trusty nerds who are not trusting and verifying have gone in there and taken a look at it, made sure it's all good. So go to shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin made simple and use the promo code Bitcoin made simple to get 5% off. Yeah, okay, so there we go. All right, we're good.
Sorry about that. My daughter was trying to call me and I accidentally pushed the wrong button.
Oh, no, that's okay. That's okay. So you're saying about us boomers
Yeah,
versus the
like
kids.
people my age are a little bit. I'm not necessarily a boomer, but people a little bit older than me, I think it's harder for them to wrap their head around Bitcoin just because they didn't grow up with all the technology in it. And so kids these days that grow up um, using, being introduced to Bitcoin at a younger age, it'll be easier for them.
Yeah, yeah. It just makes so much more sense because they're like, why would I hold paper money? That's like, you know, like for boomers, it's really hard where they're like, I can't touch Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, yeah, you can. Like there's, you can touch it. But for the younger generation, it's just gonna make sense. And it's funny, like my son has his piggy bank and but like he knows all about Bitcoin. He's 7. So he's like, you know, daddy's been into Bitcoin basically as far as he knows his whole life. Um and he just, you know, he doesn't it doesn't even phase him like because I said, do you want for like chores, do you want to earn Bitcoin? He was like, yeah. And I'm like, all right. cool, let's do that. He doesn't, the volatility doesn't make sense to him yet. He doesn't even know how
Yeah.
much money he has, but like, I'm sure, like, I'm just envisioning, I'm like, okay, 5 years from now, he's like 12 and he's doing like, maybe he's going around cutting grass and like people's yards. Like, he's probably going to Bitcoin. He's not going to want money. Like, if they give him cash, he's going to come home and be like, Dad, can you like turn this to Bitcoin real quick?
Yeah.
Like, what do I do with this paper? Um, it's just insane. And the kids are just so, well, technology wise, what do you see? How is fifth grade? Is it getting bad with technology with kids in school? They have like phones and all that stuff. And I swear we're trying to not let our kids have phones until they like can drive.
Yeah, being an educator, um, I've seen the rise of the cell phone in the classroom. I remember 15, 20 years ago, like nobody had cell phones. And then it gradually got to the point where a few kids had cell phones, and now it's pretty much every kid in middle school, almost every kid has a cell phone. Um, Maybe one or two kids don't. Um, and maybe one or two kids, their parents might make them leave their phones at home during the school day. But I guarantee you, if I did a survey of my classes, it'd be 95% of the kids have a phone, their own
Yeah.
phone. My wife teaches as well. She teaches technology,
Okay.
and she teaches elementary. So she's teaching kindergartners how to use the computer. Um, and most of them, they come into class and they already know, they're already getting on Google and YouTube and doing stuff as kindergartners. So they're kids these days, they're growing up on the tech.
And so she's a tech teacher, but she's not a Bitcoiner. Or she's a Bitcoiner by proxy, maybe.
Yeah, she just and there's a lot of people that I talk to that are like this. It just doesn't pique her interest,
Hmm.
which blows my mind. When I say something like Bitcoin is going to change the world, she's just like, okay, honey. Like, she doesn't want to know why I think that.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
I'm
you
the
don't
same way. Like,
you you don't want to know the details, babe? No, just as long as you can buy me a vacation home in about 5 years.
yep. That's
Okay.
that's that's like I'll get there every once in a while. It just bubbles up, and we'll be in the car, and I start talking, and she goes, "Okay, you have about 5 minutes." She's like, "That's the max I can listen." Like,
Right.
she's like, I can't. She's like, it just doesn't register with me, and
Mhm.
she's like, I'm glad you're paying attention to the finances, and all that kind of stuff, because that's your domain. I mean, then we laugh because like she's like, if something ever happened to me, like I'm just so afraid of what you and the kids will eat. Like,
Exactly.
she's like, you gotta eat like, just
Pizza
like
every
Taco
night.
Bell and
Yeah.
McDonald's and Wendy's. And I was like, well, no, I mean, we'll eat like Pizza Hut too. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
you know, the, like we'll mix it up every once in a while. But like, I was like, she just told my son, she was like, you can learn to, he asked when he could like cook with her. And she said, oh, I'm going to teach you how to cook so that you know how to cook for your wife someday. And I was like, was that directed at me? And she was like, take it how you want.
Yep.
So it's like, but it's just how any marriage is. It's like, you each pick up the slack in like different areas. But it's funny because like, I guess if I look at it from the aspect of like, if she was really excited about cooking and how cooking was going to change the world, I'd
Right.
be like, all right, you have like 5 minutes. Like, this is the most I can handle, you know. Although I actually, not ironically, she's been telling me for years about GMOs, seed oils, all that stuff.
Really.
And yeah, and so that's why I joke. I tell her she's a Bitcoiner. She doesn't even know because I'm sure you've seen on Twitter. It's
Yeah.
like the Bitcoiners are all about organic, you know, eating grass-fed meat and you know, rejecting seed oils, sunscreen's bad for you,
Right.
like all that stuff. And I'm like, you told me these things. Well, actually, I didn't even one thing I told her, I said, we shouldn't use sunscreen anymore. And she was like, we don't. I was like, Oh, she's like, why? Like, have you not noticed the sunscreen we use is like a paste? I'm like, oh, I
That's
just do
fine.
what I'm told.
Yeah, my wife is very health conscious as well. She's gluten free and all that stuff. So she can't wear sunscreen naturally because she's allergic to it. So that's something that we're used to. We don't really use sunscreen.
Well, it works out. I mean, you don't need it. Turns out for, 99.99% of human existence, we didn't have sunscreen,
Mm-hmm.
and people tended to not get melanoma. Um, and it's just interesting. I don't know. It's just so many rabbit holes that have you
Yeah.
noticed when you get into Bitcoin, you're like, oh, the Bitcoin rabbit hole, and you like work your way into it, and then you're like, there is like 1,000 other rabbit holes in here.
Yep. It's never ending.
Wonder if have you ever listened to Daniel Prince's podcast?
No.
The Once Bitten podcast. He's a big advocate for homeschool. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and and I'm like in the middle of the road on that. So I'm curious what your thoughts are, like, because like where we move to, the class sizes are really small, and it's like I can see the huge benefit in that. So like we're not necessarily homeschoolers. I don't want the government teaching my kids things I don't want them to know, but like we moved to a rural area, so I don't think we're gonna have that problem. Um, and also I don't have the capacity to be a teacher. I don't know how you guys do it. Have my hats off to you guys, but you know, the
It's
thing go ahead.
teaching is a. I tell people that teaching is a roller coaster ride. It definitely has its ups, but it has its downs. And the topic of homeschooling can be very touchy for some
Mm-hmm.
educators. There's some educators that believe that homeschooling is just garbage. Like um, they'll say, anytime I ever had some teachers will say, sometimes they'll say, anytime I've had a homeschool student that has come to a regular classroom, they're so far behind everyone, is what they usually say. Um, for me, I think the only reason that I've stayed in education this long is because I teach art. Um, if I was teaching a core class like math or science or something like that, I don't know if I would have survived in education as long as I have. It's just it's so difficult to jump through all the hoops that teachers are made to jump through these days with all the testing and curriculum and all that stuff. Um, because I teach art, I'm free to basically teach whatever I want. I don't have to do testing. I have fun with the kids, and I don't have to worry about all that other stuff. I know several families that homeschool their kids, and their kids are great. They probably you can, if you have a good family that's homeschooling their kids, um, it's 1,000 times better than
Mm-hmm.
coming to a public classroom, um, because you can probably learn more in 1 to 2 hours of homeschooling than you will in an entire day or week in the classroom. Um, Now, I've also had you know some homeschool kids that came to the public school, and they were very far behind because homeschooling for them, they weren't really being schooled at all. They were just,
Mm-hmm.
so it just depends. And there are a lot of things I can see that parents wouldn't want um, their kids to be taught at a public school. Um, and my kids, we just teach them what we believe, and then tell them that you might be taught something different at school,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay because people have different opinions, but this is why we believe what we believe. I think that's healthy
Mm-hmm.
for kids to know that there's different opinions out there, and it's okay if your teacher's teaching you something maybe that you don't quite agree with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's more for older kids, because younger kids, they, you know,
Yeah, they're just
if you're, I don't know how political we want to get here, but if you're teaching like a kindergartner that, it's great to be a transgender, that's going to ruffle a lot of parents' feathers, I think.
yep.
The kindergartner's not old enough to be like, I know here. They can't. They're kindergartners.
I know. I
Um,
was like, they're kindergartners. They don't need to be talking about sex.
right, exactly. So yeah, I mean, if the school I was in was, um, teaching stuff like that, I would probably have a problem with it. But um, we don't go that route, and hopefully most schools don't go that route. I know if you're in California or New York, um, then your kids are probably getting taught stuff that you might not agree with if they're in the public school. Um, and as a parent, you need to be aware of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, before I let you go, one of the a couple one angle I wanted to get at with you since you're an art teacher, because me being a filmmaker, I obviously am a big believer in the arts. Um, and I, was part of I was the hybrid in high school. I was like captain of the hockey team, played baseball, but also was like played the trombone, was in the wind ensemble, took art classes, did the
Wow.
musical, jazz band, like so I wasn't in one camp or the other. And there was a few of us like that. And so we liked, being friends with everybody. Um, and but I just always see the value, like art is so valuable to um education. And like I don't know, this is just my personal opinion. Like I look at it as, you know like you take a math test and it can be, it was like you're either right or wrong, blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved the fact that it was, go back to my art teacher in eighth grade, Mr. Carson. But I remember, like, sitting down and drawing. I'm not the greatest like drawer. Like I'm not good at drawing realistic things. It's just not my thing with like a sketch of any kind. But I was doing like abstract art, and he just like loved it. He was like, "This is really good," and I was like, wow. Like I was like, I'm just kind of sitting down, and he like would give me stuff, be like, just sit down and make something, like whatever you want. And I was like, okay. And like I would just make these like weird things that were fun, and it was kind of like working different muscles in my brain, and I wasn't even really thinking about what I was doing. It was just spilling onto the paper. And it was like, and then at the end he'd be like, this is really good, like this is so interesting, and like, and I think it's important for kids to know that, like, look, it's not cookie cutter. Not everything is like, you shouldn't be shoved into a box. So I guess that's my long-winded say of my way of saying my view on art. But like, as an art teacher, what do you see as the value that kids get out of art, that maybe they don't even realize they're getting, and that people
Mm-hmm.
don't really ever notice?
First of all, it sounds like you had a really good art teacher. Um,
Yeah,
because
he was great.
yeah, I've talked to a lot of kids that come from other schools or go to other schools, and they talk about how their art teachers very very rigid and firm. And they make the kids do things exactly the way that they want them to do it. And sometimes that's okay, I guess, if you're teaching a specific skill or whatnot. But I tend to be more free with the kids, where if if they want to make the art in their own way, they can. And so the what kids get out of it is, they get freedom to create. They're problem solving, right? They're trying to figure out the best way to create whatever it is that they're creating. Um, it's a journey, you know. I get a lot of kids in class that aren't necessarily great at art, but I'm not grading them on like how awesome their artwork looks. I think that's important for the kids to know, because it puts a lot of stress on some kids they think that if they do a bad work of art that looks bad, they're going to get a bad grade. Um, that's not good. It's not healthy for the kids to be under that kind of stress. So I try to tell the kids, just, do the best you can with it. And if it doesn't turn out the way that you thought it would turn out, doesn't look the way you thought it would look, that's okay. I'm not going to fail you for that. You get an A for effort, as long as you were trying and you were, uh, basically following the instructions of whatever the assignment was. Um, a lot of kids, they love coming to my class because it's a break from all the other stuff that they're doing throughout the day. And all their other classes are forced to sit and take notes, or do whatever, doing all this other stressful stuff. In my class, I try to make it as less stressful as possible, where they get to come in and be creative. And I get to, it's not complete freedom. If you give middle schoolers complete freedom, look out, they're going to,
Yeah.
burn down the building. But, I try to, gently nudge them and, direct them in the right directions. But they get, freedom to be creative.
Uh-huh. Yeah. No, I think that's important, and like the thing that's cool about art is that like, it's important for kids to know that it's like cool to be different. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's hard for middle schoolers. They all want to be cool, but they all think cool is being a certain way, when really, if they just would just be themselves, that would
Yep.
be the best thing for them. And it's hard for them to figure that out. Middle schoolers are not quite human yet, is what we say here at the middle school. Their brains are not fully developed yet.
Uh-huh.
they they still got a long ways to go. So it takes a lot of patience as a teacher working
Yeah.
with middle schoolers.
Yeah, I could imagine. It could be exhausting. Um I was just trying to teach my son swim lessons, like, and that was frustrating as could be, and I'm like, I don't know how people do it. I tease my brother and sister all the time where I'm like, oh man, like teaching so hard. You have a 3 month paid vacation, like it's but I know I do it with love for them, because I know that it's not an easy job. And um especially my sister teaches like theology. She's at a Catholic school and she teaches
Mm.
theology, and like, talking about like kids like different views on the world, like high schoolers. I'm like, ooh, like I would not want to be in your shoes right now, like having high schoolers coming in and talking about their theories on what's going on in the world.
Oh yeah, they got some strange ideas.
Yep. Yep, they definitely do. But wow. So I really appreciate this. And maybe it'd be good to do like, maybe every once in a while do like a check-in as time progresses, to see how, like where you are in your Bitcoin journey, because I find, that it's like it's just always evolving and stuff. So be curious to.
Absolutely, that would be awesome. One thing I wanted to ask you about before we leave
Hmm.
is wallets,
Yeah.
uh, because, like I said, I am not the most tech savvy person in the world,
Hmm.
and I actually bought a Trezor wallet last year and could not figure out how to use it. I don't think I had the right computer for it or something. And then, like I mentioned, I want to get some Bitcoin for my son.
Hmm.
So you apparently have a recommendation.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
sponsor. Yep. And I can send you, so yeah, it's the Bitbox O2 hardware wallet, shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin made simple is where you can check it out. And I'll DM you the message, but if you use promo code Bitcoin made simple, you get 5% off.
Okay.
um I really like it because it's like, honestly, this I wish I have one like on hand just to like show to the camera, but it's like the size, it's like slightly bigger than a thumb drive.
Okay.
um you plug it in to your USB port. It even comes with the adapter if you have that smaller like USB-C or whatever. um but on a MacBook or a like Windows, whatever you use, there's just a uh, application you download, um, and then you can get the address from that and just go to your exchange and send it to your address. And it's like the little thumb drive thing is password protected, but it's like a touch screen, so it's very easy to use. You just and especially for someone like your son who's like a teenager, probably be pretty intuitive for him. Um, but yeah, it's I would recommend that one just because the other ones can be really intimidating, I feel like. And I was
Mhm.
really intimidated the first time I ever did a wallet. And I always joke whenever I talk about the Bitbox is that like in the past I had a wallet and I'd send Bitcoin to it and then I would just leave it because I was like, I don't want to do that again. That was scary,
Yeah.
you know. Um and so what I with the Bitbox though, I actually it's like so easy that I got like addicted to it. I was like, ooh, I bought like I should go buy like $200 of Bitcoin and send it to the wallet real quick. Um, just because it felt good having it in cold storage.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, so I would recommend using them, not just because they're the sponsor. I do firmly believe that. I know the my listeners probably like, oh, you take a sponsor just for money, but uh quite seriously, I wouldn't take a sponsor if it wasn't something that I didn't like myself
Mhm.
and
Right.
believe in, because this isn't my job, this is a hobby,
Right.
so I'm just trying to spread the signal. Uh but yeah, it's pretty easy to use, and then it comes with a micro SD that you can like put in and then use that as your backup. So like you could put it in like two separate locations. So you put that into like the thing while you're putting it on, you back it up, and then you pull the micro SD out. Um, so you could put one in like, you put the one in like your safety deposit box or something like that,
Mhm.
the micro SD, and then put your, actual Bitbox, somewhere at home in a secure place.
Mhm.
Um, and then I'm I have to see how this could. I mean, every time you can create a new address, but you could also send it to the same address, I think, and have it land on your wallet again. Like I'm not. I mean, I'm pretty sure that might be really bad advice, but you know, regardless, you just go on, you generate a new address,
Mhm.
and it goes to the same wallet. Like that, every wallet can create like I think millions of addresses. Um, I think that's so that like it's less trackable, more secure. Um, but yeah, I would say that would be a good way to get your son involved, like because it's probably one of the slicker ones. Um, that would be much more up his alley because he's this tech generation.
Yeah.
um but yeah, if you have any questions about it too, just DM me. I can walk through it with you, and hopefully we can figure it out together, and maybe your son will listen to this and go, you know what, Dad, you're right, I need Bitcoin, I need some Bitcoin. um he's probably going to go out and buy more. Um, so hopefully we did our job. Well, where did you get the name Thunder Meat, by the way? I was curious about that.
Um, it came from, you know who Dave Barry is, the famous comedian, author, or writer.
Dave
Dave
Barry.
Barry. He's done a couple movies, and he writes, and written a lot of books. Um, and Thunder Meat was in one of his books I was reading, and Thunder Meat was the what he would call his rock band if he ever had a rock band. I just thought it was funny, so I snagged it and used it as my Twitter handle.
That's funny. That's funny. I wonder if any of your former students are going to find you on Twitter now, and
Oh, a few already have.
so now they're going to be like, "Oh, my teacher's. Look at he's on a podcast now. It's crazy." I mean, I know for a fact if Mr. Carson was on a podcast, I would be watching it right now, and I'm 36 years old.
Yeah.
more than 20 years ago when he was my teacher. Um, so, but yeah, well, I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time. And, I'll tell the plebs if anybody wants to talk shitcoin to Bitcoin stories, to reach out to Thundermate.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks so
Thank,
much for coming on. I appreciate
yeah.
it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to Josh for coming on. And again, any plebs that want to join the show and tell their story of how they went shitcoiner to Bitcoiner, I will gladly have you on. I will talk to you guys. Oh, it's the duh. Thanks to the sponsor again, shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin made simple. Use the promo code Bitcoin made simple to get 5% off. Thank you guys. I will talk to you guys next week.